I want to talk about your writing process and tease that up, but we should probably do it as we talk about the view from the very best house in town, which is available February 8th. So Tuesday, esteemed audience, as you're listening to us, go ahead and pre-order your copy. Or if you're listening to us after Tuesday, I'm so glad you found us. Go ahead and get your copy right now. So with that really ham-handed segue, let's talk about the very best house in town. If you would give us an overview of the novel, and we'll go back and we'll talk about your process for creating it.
Sure. Is it okay? Because again, I think they've written it better than I can, so I'm just going to read it. Sam and Asha, Ashan and Sam, their friendship is so long established, they take it for granted, just as Asha takes for granted that Donnybrook, the mansion that sits on the highest hill in Corville, is the best house in town. But when Sam is accepted into Snappish Castleton Academy as an autistic miracle boy, he leaves Asha, who is also autistic, to navigate middle school alone. He also leaves her wondering if she can take anything for granted anymore. Because soon Sam is spending time with Preston, Asha's nemesis, whose family owns Donnybrook and, since a housewarming party gone wrong, has forbidden Asha to set foot inside. Who is Asha without Sam? And who will she be when it becomes clear that Preston's interest in her friend isn't so friendly? Told from the points of view of Asha, Sam, and Donnybrook itself, this suspenseful and highly original debut explores issues of ableism and classism as it delves into the mystery of what makes a person a friend and a house a home. So that's the view from the very best house in town. And as you said, it's coming out February 8th. And it's a middle grade novel. The first middle grade novel I wrote, the other one was sort of young YA. And it was a story very close to my heart. And one of my favorite parts about drafting it, even if it was one of the hardest parts, was the fact that it was told from these three different points of view. And I felt like that drafting it from one point of view wasn't letting me tell the story I wanted to tell. So really being able to delve deeply into these three characters, even though one was not actually a person, kind of allowed me to say and do things in the novel that let me kind of get out the story I was trying to get out. So
I should mention, esteemed audience, who never misses an episode, wants to make sure that they tune in next week when I'll be chatting with Leslie Connor, whose book, Anyone Here Seen Frenchie, is remarkably similar in some ways. It's a nice companion piece with this. I was, how wonderful that it worked out that I have these two novels about two sets of autistic children who are friends, one of whom is moving into a new school situation, and that's putting strain on their friendship. Well, that dovetails nicely. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. With the view from the very best house in town, let's go back. So when does this idea come to you? When do you officially start working on this book?
Yeah, so it came to me slowly. I think that's a running theme of this conversation. Some of it came from my own experience as a parent and looking at the gap between what we say we value in our kids, with, telling them to be kind, but also what kind of how parents' own insecurities about social status and other things kind of cut against the messages we're kind of outwardly giving and undercut them. It came to me thinking about houses and how, what's the purpose of a home and what do we value most about our homes, the shelter that they give us or what they tell the outside world. And all these different themes seem to dovetail. And then kind of as I implied in my first book, I tend not to write with a whole lot of plot. I tend to start with character. So I started with the character of Asha, an autistic girl who loves houses, whose friendship is breaking apart, her longtime friendship with this boy, Sam. But then also pretty early on, if not maybe even before Asha, the voice of this McMansion, I then named Donnybrook came to me too, who's very, very pleased with its McMansion self and what all its turrets and other fancy features say about it. So that's how it started, but I went a couple drafts at least. So there are 3 points of view characters, as I mentioned. I went, fully through a couple drafts and something was missing. And I realized there was a lot talked about Sam, but he wasn't actually a voice in the book. And it occurred to me the story just couldn't be told without his voice and his experience too. So then I put in that voice, but then of course, when you have 3 points of view character, just from a craft perspective, you can't, first of all, only certain characters experience certain things, so they can only tell certain parts of the story. At the same time, you don't want to be repetitive and be telling the same incident over and over again. So then that became, even though I'm not, I'd say for early drafts, I'm not a plotter. Eventually I have to be like, okay, what are we doing here? Step by step and figure out who was telling what part of the story.